One of the most difficult questions people ask themselves after an abusive relationship is this: did they actually love me? The beginning of the relationship often feels very real. The emotions are strong. Everything feels intense. You seem to have so much in common. They appear just as excited about the relationship as you are. But then something changes. The warmth turns into coldness. Care turns into criticism. The person who once built you up is now breaking you down. That question, did they ever love me, can haunt people for a long time, and it's not always easy to answer on your own. Hi there, I'm David McDermott, and in this video I want to examine this question logically and critically so you can begin to untangle some of the emotional confusion that people experience after abusive relationships. If you are in a relationship with a psychopath, a narcissist, or a sociopath, there's something very important you need to keep in mind. These individuals have personality disorders. Why does that matter? Because by definition, people with these disorders do not experience emotions the way most people do. They do not experience the socializing emotions that allow healthy relationships to exist. Things like genuine love, empathy, guilt, remorse, embarrassment, or shame. That's the first point. However, there's an important caveat here. I said if you are dealing with one of these personality types. It's extremely important to be as clear as you possibly can about who you are dealing with. There's a huge difference between someone who's insecure, anxious, or emotionally immature and someone with a genuine personality disorder. Those are very different situations. If you are dealing with someone with a personality disorder, you have to recognize and acknowledge that. The rules of the situation are completely different. The way you understand the relationship is different. The way you respond to their behavior is different. And the way you recover from the experience is different. Now, most people watching this video are not in a situation where the manipulator in their life is going to submit to interviews with psychologists and undergo a full diagnostic assessment. That simply isn't going to happen. So what do you do instead? There's a simple general rule. If something looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and acts like a duck, then it's reasonable to treat it as a duck. In the same way, if the person in your life consistently behaves the way psychopaths, narcissists, or sociopaths behave, then it's reasonable to assume that you may have been dealing with one of these personality types. This doesn't mean you need to run around formally diagnosing people. But for your own safety and clarity, it can be wise to consider that possibility when deciding how to handle the situation. I cannot emphasize this enough. If you treat someone with a personality disorder as though they are simply wounded, misunderstood, or acting out because of a difficult childhood, you'll approach the situation in a certain way. But if you're actually dealing with somebody who is a pathological liar, manipulative, cold, and lacking in empathy, someone who feels no remorse for the harm they cause, then applying those same assumptions will not work. In fact, you will lose. Every time. Another very important way to think about this question of love is to examine the way the person treated you. Think about some of the cruel or hurtful things they did, and ask yourself honestly, if this person truly loved you, would they treat you that way? Now, sometimes that question can be difficult to answer, so try another approach. If you love someone, could you treat them the way your manipulator treated you? Could you lie to them repeatedly, humiliate them, break their trust over and over again? For most people, the answer is clearly no. Another helpful way to look at it is this. Imagine a close friend came to you and described the exact same treatment you experienced. What advice would you give them? Would you tell them to stay in the relationship and keep trying to work things out? Or would you tell them to get away from that situation as quickly as possible? When we step outside our own emotional involvement, the answer often becomes much clearer. Here's another exercise that can help. Make one list of the behaviors that show that someone genuinely loves you. Then make a second list of the harmful behaviors the manipulator directed towards you. When people do this exercise, the contrast between the two lists is usually very stark. Now, in a healthy relationship, both people show empathy towards each other. When one person is happy, the other person enjoys that happiness. When one person is upset, the other cares about their distress. There's also respect for boundaries. If someone says, "that behavior hurts me," the other partner tries not to repeat it. How many times did you tell the manipulator that something hurt you? 10 times? 20 times? 100 times? And yet they kept doing it. That tells you something very important. It tells you they had no real respect for your feelings or your boundaries. In fact, your setting a boundary often becomes a challenge for them. They consider that you are questioning their dominance, and they set out to quickly tear that boundary down to remind you who's in charge. In a genuine relationship, there's a certain consistency. People look out for each other. They take care of each other. They try to make life better for the other person. Of course, arguments happen, but after disagreements, people usually make an effort not to hurt the other person in the same way again. Manipulators operate very differently. They can make you feel incredibly good and then incredibly bad, sometimes in the same week or even in the same day. They know exactly how to push your emotional buttons. And they know how to do this because they actually installed those buttons themselves through manipulation. Early in the relationship, manipulators often appear very caring and attentive. They ask about your day. They show interest in your life. They make you feel important. But this usually happens only during the early phase when they're trying to shape your impression of them. Once they feel they have a certain level of control, that effort fades, the warmth disappears, and the colder, more callous side of their personality begins to emerge. When you try and talk about some good experience you've had, they minimize the whole thing. They ridicule you. They tell you about their bigger success, and so on. At this point, many people say, "But they told me they loved me. I was precious to them. They couldn't live without me." Sure they did, but words are very cheap for people like this. Remember, these individuals are practiced liars. They will say whatever is necessary in the moment to keep you attached to the relationship. You built a life around those words. You believed they loved you. So it made sense to move forward, living together, making plans, building a future. This is something many people don't understand. The reality is that all those words were simply part of the manipulation. You wouldn't do it to somebody else. You find it hard to believe that somebody would do it to you. Another important factor here is that the lie is so big, it can take time to fully process that it was actually a lie. Many abusive relationships follow a predictive cycle. First, there's tension, where the victim feels on edge, sensing that something bad is about to happen. Then comes the abuse itself. Afterwards comes reconciliation, where the manipulator minimizes what happened, blames the victim, or offers apologies. Then comes the calm phase, where everything appears normal again. This calm phase is often the most dangerous part, because during this time, the manipulator may be affectionate and again repeat the words, "I love you." It's dangerous because during this stage, victims often forgive and forget, hoping that the good times have returned. This is not your fault. This is how manipulation and psychological control work. Manipulators may say they love you, but their actions tell a very different story. When you compare the words they spoke with the way they actually treated you, the two simply do not match. And that tells you something very important. So if the manipulator didn't love you, then another question naturally follows. Why did they start a relationship with you in the first place? In the next video, we'll explore that question. We look at what actually motivates these individuals and how they take advantage of your strengths. Understanding these things are fundamental so that you can clear up the confusion and make a full recovery. Mind yourself. Take care.